Welcome to the Insight Channel, your user's guide to living life with vision loss. I'm Jazz, I'm a blind occupational therapist, and I'll be your guide. How do blind people do laundry? This is a question that Insight for Blind channel received from a viewer in Washington State. It's a great question. So that's what we're talking about today, laundry. Being clean and having clean laundry is an important part of staying healthy. And if you have the right adaptations and the right tools, there's no reason why you can't do it independently, whether you have low vision or no vision. It's 5 systems you have to have in place: identification, sorting, measuring, marking, and then of course storage. And we're going to touch on those today. Step 1, identifying your clothing. When you're dealing with laundry, you have to start at the very beginning and make sure that you can identify what you're washing to make sure that it goes into the proper wash cycle and that you know if it should be with lights or darks. So there are many different methods for identifying your clothing, and we're going to cover that in a future video because that's a video all of its own. So whatever method you choose, you just need to make sure that you know which wash cycle to go on, which temperature cycle to wash it, and where to store it once it comes out of the laundry so you know what you're dealing with. So step 2 is sorting. Having a good sorting system is really important. It can save you a lot of time and headache when you're dealing with laundry. For example, in my family, each of us have our own laundry bins and we keep our own laundry separate from each other's. That just makes it quicker and easier to deal with when we're doing laundry. I have several different bins that I like to use to separate my light colors from my dark colors. For example, this is a squared netted bin for light colors, and then I have one that feels completely different, which is round, made of a different fabric, for dark colors. And so I know when one of these gets full, it's time to then break it down into different wash cycles and go ahead and wash that load. Now, if you don't want to go through all of that and you're not so worried about separating your lights from your darks, there are things nowadays that you can use. This is called a Shout color catcher. I'm giving a shout out to Shout here. But these are just little things that you can throw into the wash, like a dye magnet that actually helps to keep your colors from bleeding onto your whites. So even if you do separate, this is a great backup system in case you accidentally get a red sock in there with some white or light colored clothing to keep it from bleeding out. It's important to know how your washer and dryer are designed because every brand and every model has its own way of doing things. So pick one that works well for you and try to go for those that have less bells and whistles if you can, just because they're easier to mark and easier to use. So for me, I'm going to speak in generalities today because I know my washer is going to be different than yours. But as a rule of thumb, I prefer washing machines that actually have an old-fashioned agitator in them. That's that piece that sticks up in the middle, because I feel like it really gets the clothes cleaner than the newer models that don't have the agitator. And when you can't see your clothes, you really need to make sure you have a machine that you can trust that's going to get your clothes clean. Step 3, a measuring system. Now, I recommend, if you're visually impaired, that you put the soap into the machine before you put the laundry in. That'll keep it from getting globbed onto your clothes, especially if you use powdered soap, because a lot of times if you pour the powder on top of the clothes, it doesn't really dissolve into the water, and then you end up with stains or globs of soap on your clothes when you bring them out, and you might not be able to see that. Then when it comes to measuring, you can make this as simple or as complex as you want. I tend to just use the finger of the cup method that I had mentioned in a previous video, but there are pre-measured pods that you can get nowadays that you can just toss into your laundry if you really want to make it simple. So line up the spout to the cup. I have my finger over the edge. Pour, pour, pour. There we go. And if you do it while you're standing over the machine, you don't have to worry about spilling because a few extra little drops isn't going to hurt anything. As I mentioned earlier, every machine is going to be different, so you need to get to know your machine so you can know how to clean your clothes. But that all begins with knowing your clothes. Be sure to access the labels when you purchase items to make sure you know what wash cycle they belong in. That's going to make your clothes last longer and look better when you do it right. So then the next step is going to be marking your appliances, and the only way to do that really is to read the manual that came with the device and get some sighted assistance to make sure you're marking it properly. Now, if you don't have friends or family available to help give you those eyes, there are options through a smartphone or tablet where you can use either Be My Eyes, where volunteers are on the other side of the camera that can help you, or Aira, that's A-I-R-A, which is an app where there are people who are specially trained to help people with vision impairment to see things that they need to see. That's a great option when it comes to doing things like this, where you're just going to have a pair of eyes on it to help. Step 4, marking your appliances. In a previous video, I talked about how to mark flat panel appliances, which is going to be very similar to what we're looking at today, which is specifically marking your washer and dryer. So the key to using tactile markers is to keep it simple so that you have as much information as you need on there with as few markings as possible. And it's all going to be individualized. On my washer here, you will see lots of bright, colorful lettering and some bump dots to mark, to give me the information I need. I love it. It's very bright and colorful. Some people would look at this and say, there's no way I'm putting all that on my appliance. But I challenge you to put this into perspective and think, what's more important? To have a washer and dryer that are nice, neat, and clean and showroom looking in a room that no one ever visits? Or is it more important for you to be independent? If you ask me, I'm always going to go for independence. And I'll tell you a little secret. When my kids saw all these colorful letters on my washer and dryer, they were totally intrigued. They wanted to know what it meant. So it gave me a great opportunity to teach them how to do their own laundry. So there are 3 main settings on a washer. You have your load size, your water temperature, and then your wash cycle. So we're going to start over here with the load size. I have 2 things marked on load size. I have small, marked with a bump dot and an S, and then I have large, which is marked with a bump dot and an L. And since I can easily find each of those 2 settings, you can find all the other sizes around them. So moving over to the water temperature. I rinse everything on cold, so really what I'm talking about is what temperature we're washing on. So I have a bump dot with a C for cold, and then I have an H for hot, and then I know warm is in between. There are 1,000 different settings on washers nowadays. They're a lot like microwaves, but we always tend to use the same settings over and over again, and those are the ones you want to put the markings on. So let's move over to the wash cycle. I have here a bump dot and an N for normal. Now on your normal cycle, that's where you have your more soiled clothes, like work clothes, play clothes, cottons, things that really need a good scrubbing. That's going to be the most harsh cycle. And I always put it on the medium spot just to be average. Then I've got a bump dot and a D on my delicates. And then another bump dot on permanent press. And permanent press is a great medium between the normal and delicate cycle because it's for clothes that are chemically treated to help keep them wrinkle free. And so you don't want it to go into a harsh normal cycle. You want it to be where it's going to be a little bit more gentle when it's spinning it around. So now this is all fine and good for my washer and dryer because they're my personal machine. But if you live in a facility where you're sharing, like a dorm room, or if you're in an independent living facility, they may not want you to put all these wonderful markers all over the machines. So there is an option, which would be to create a template. So here I've created one out of some canvas, which can get wet. And I have put low vision markings on this just to show you how it can be done. Now you can make this tactual as well if you would like. I clip the top right corner so I know it's right side up, and I cut a hole that fits directly over the dial, and it is marked to show where these same settings are. So I know that this is N for normal, then I go down to the permanent press, and of course over here for the delicate. And so this is just to show you how you can be creative if you're living in a community setting and still be independent to use the machines. And of course, every washer and dryer is going to have a start-stop button. Usually they're off to themselves and they're easy to find, like the one on my machine. So that's why I don't have that one marked. Now when it comes to your dryer, it's a much simpler device. You really only have to look at the temperature of the air. So we have your delicate, medium, and then of course your regular or normal temperatures, and then your cycle. So I have mine on either permanent press or regular. The beauty of most of the dryers nowadays is they have an auto setting where it can tell when your clothes are dry, and then it'll go ahead and stop, which is great. I tend to hang up all of my clothes, or at least I'll throw them in just for a few minutes to get some of those wrinkles out, and then I hang it up because I don't want them to shrink, which can happen in the dryer, and I just feel like it helps to get the wrinkles out more if I hang them to dry. Every dryer should have a lint trap, and it's very, very important that you remember to clean out the lint in your dryer before you put your next load in. The reason being is because if the lint builds up over time, it can actually cause a fire. So not only do you want to clean it with your hands and get it off the little screen part, but every now and then you want to actually get a vacuum down there and clean out the whole trap itself. It'll keep your dryer working better, longer, and keep you safe. Step 5, storage system. How you store your laundry after it's been cleaned will make a difference in the appearance of your clothes. For example, it's really important to completely follow through with the task. It's all fine and good to get it clean, but if you leave stuff in the laundry too long, then they're going to get wrinkled. Myself, I usually like to hang up most of my clothes to help keep the wrinkles out, but if I do put something in the dryer, then I will take it out before it gets completely dry so that gravity can do its magic and help it to dry smoothly. Also, there are other things you can do if you can't see wrinkles or if you're worried about wrinkles. For one thing, make sure you put them away immediately once the buzzer sounds on your dryer. Fold them up, hang them up, get them where they need to be. That's the first step. Secondly, if you do notice something has wrinkles, you can always throw it back into the dryer and have it tumble around with a wet washcloth. That can help. Another thing that can help if you're going, let's say, on an interview or you have a hot date and you have a special outfit you want to wear that might be a little wrinkled, there's a product on the market called Wrinkle Release that you spray on your clothes when they're dry, and then you take the fabric and pull it taut, and it helps to release those wrinkles and smooth out the fabric so it looks more pressed. Now the last one, of course, is ironing. I haven't met anybody who likes ironing, but ironing is a great way to get out wrinkles. However, it's a video all in itself. So we're going to do ironing in another future video. So definitely stay tuned for Insight for Blind so you can see how a blind person would handle an iron safely. Having a good organizational system for your clothes, where you hang them up or where you store them, is going to work hand in hand with your identification system. And I'm going to talk about both of those systems in more detail again in a future video. So I've got lots of wonderful videos coming up, so I hope you subscribe and stay tuned to this channel so you can get more details on how to do your laundry from A to Z. So the last thing here for today is to talk about lint and making sure you really look polished when you leave the house. If you happen to have pets, like I have 2 cats and a puppy, there's a good chance you're going to have lint or hair on your clothes. And so every morning before I go to work, I take one of these lint rollers and roll myself, because I can't see the lint, but there's a really good chance it's there. So why not, right? So I go ahead and roll myself every morning to make sure that the lint is gone. That's important, so you always are having a nice, clean, polished appearance. So now you have insight into how this works. When you leave the house, it's important to feel clean, look polished, smell good. That's going to give you the confidence you need to be a success. And so when it comes to laundry, there are 5 systems you have to have in place to make sure you're doing this right. First, your identification system, then your sorting system, measuring system, marking system, and then of course your storage system, or how you organize your clothes. Thanks for joining me today. If you like this video, click the thumbs up at the bottom of your screen. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll be notified when all those great new videos are posted in the weeks to come. Send me your questions, comments, or ideas for future videos. I'd love to hear from you. My job is to give you the tips, tools, and techniques to be a success, whether you have low vision or no vision. So no worries, you got this. See you next time.